Hey everyone, this is Mike from the Comic Book Trove here today with another Omnibus review. And today I'm going to take a look at a book which collects one of my favourite events of all time. This is the Infinity Gauntlet Omnibus, and it features a whole lot of classic material, primarily written by the great Jim Starlin, who was really one of the original architects of the cosmic side of the Marvel Universe. You know, he created the character of Thanos and a whole bunch of other ideas along the way. So I'm just going to take a look in here, I'll showcase it, go through the material, and share some of my thoughts on that. This book is still available, I believe. I only picked it up fairly recently myself, so you should be able to find it in some places if you are looking to pick it up. Before we dive into the book itself, let's take a look at this dust jacket here, the standard variant cover, and this classic comic artwork by the late great George Perez, who did sadly pass away earlier this year. Absolutely one of the all-time greats in the industry. You could talk all day about his contributions to comics, but for now, let me just praise this particular piece of artwork. This is the cover to Infinity Gauntlet issue 1, and it's just one of my favourite covers of all time. I absolutely love it. Such a cool image with Thanos and the gauntlet and the gleaming lights coming off the Infinity Gems, and of course various other characters that feature in the story. It's just really well done, and it's an image that always springs to my mind. It's forever associated with this event. If I think Infinity Gauntlet, I think this image. You know, they're just really, really cool. So it had to be the cover choice that I went for. If we take a look around the rest of it, then we've got the spine here with your Infinity Gauntlet logo, the 6 Infinity Gems. What's cool is if you've got the Thanos Infinity Wars Origin, what is it? Thanos Wars Infinity Origin, that's the one. That omnibus, which is effectively a prelude to this event, and I did talk about that book a couple of weeks ago on the channel, so feel free to go back and look at that if you're interested. But this design with the 6 gems there lines up perfectly with the same row of gems on that book as well. So if you get these books next to each other, that little detail looks pretty cool. It's a small thing, but you know, the small things matter. Right, let's take a look at the back then. So we've got the cover gallery of the images, the issues collected in here. So a whole lot of stuff. The book is really split up into 3 chunks, which I'll talk a little bit more about what I mean by that and hopefully elaborate on as I go through the book. You got contents down there at the bottom if you want to pause and take a look at those. But let's take a look at the book itself now. So underneath the dust cover on the front, we got that same classic Perez image minus the text. It actually looks even cooler without any of the text on there. Thick book this, you know. One of the larger ones, I think. It's got the same design on the spine though. No difference there. But the back has got what is the DM variant cover for the omnibus. This is an image of course, Thanos with the gauntlet. It's by Jim Starlin and Terry Austin. And that's pretty cool. Although I did always feel that the hand looks a little bit misshapen. I don't know if that's just me, but yeah, for me, as I say, there was no contest in terms of which cover I preferred for this omnibus. A lot of the time I feel both cover options, or sometimes 3 cover options, are all as good as each other, but the Perez cover wins every time for me in this case. So let's take a look in. I'm going to give a spoiler warning now because I will talk about some of the plot details in here, some of the stuff that happens. As I say, this is one of my favourite stories, so I can't really let the opportunity go by to talk about the story in some detail and share thoughts on that. Huge list of creators in here, as you can see on this first page. You've got a lot of different writers, Jim Starlin, of course, being the main one. But then it lists all the different writers who feature in the tie-in issues. Same goes for the pencilers, inkers, colorists, etc. And we'll move on to the contents page. So when I say this book is split into 3 kind of distinctive chunks, what I mean by that is you've basically got a kind of a prologue chunk, which goes through the Silver Surfer issues from 34 to 50, as well as the 2 Thanos Quest issues. All of that is basically build-up to the Infinity Gauntlet. And that takes about 400 and something pages of the omnibus. And then you get to Infinity Gauntlet 1 to 6, which is the event itself. And then after that point, you've got all the different tie-ins, which are collected in the back. So it's like prologue, event, tie-ins. That's the way that this book is structured. And so you jump in with Silver Surfer issue 34 then. So this was the beginning of Jim Starlin's run as writer on Silver Surfer. He took over with this issue and he wasted absolutely no time in bringing Thanos into the story, as the cover pretty much gives away, to say the least. And from this point onwards, he did a really, really good job. Honestly, I love the build-up to this event, arguably more than the event itself. So the story that runs through Silver Surfer 34 to 50 plus those Thanos Quest issues is at least as good as Infinity Gauntlet. I actually kind of like it a bit more though, I think. And it is helped enormously by the fact that you've got just amazing artwork by Ron Lim, who illustrates these Silver Surfer issues and the Thanos Quest issues, and does a great job, honestly. It's just fantastic artwork in here. So it all starts with Silver Surfer coming down to this planet. He's just kind of weary from his previous adventures, but before he knows it, he's being drawn into all kinds of craziness, which seems to be a hallucination. You know, he sees the Lady Death and some of her minions. They talk about some kind of cosmic imbalance. And the next thing you know, Thanos is back in the flesh. Now, Thanos had not been in the comics at all, not really, since the end of the material that's collected in the Thanos Wars Infinity Origin Omnibus. And that omnibus is really the prelude to all this stuff. And I have covered that a couple of weeks ago on the channel now, so feel free to go back and take a look at that if you're interested. But yeah, so that stuff leads into this stuff. Thanos had been gone since then, and in his very first issue on this story, Starlin brings him back. As I say, no time wasted. Also cool to see that there are some special features just kind of scattered throughout the omnibus. So you get a cover here of a Rebirth of Thanos trade paperback. But yeah, so this is I really like this issue 35. I won't go through every issue play by play, or this would take forever, but I do want to point this issue out because it's really cool, and it's where I think the premise of the Avengers Infinity War film came from, because this is an issue where Thanos explains the overpopulation problem in the universe, how there are basically too many people and not enough resources for them. So it's his plan to cull a lot of life, basically, you know? He wants to just cut down the population of the universe so that people don't wipe themselves out through overpopulation. And even though that plot point, that logic that Thanos presents there kind of falls by the wayside a little bit as this story goes on, he's not, you know, his primary focus is on impressing Death because he still loves Death. That's very much the central part of this story, is his constant need to impress her because he loves her. And that's why he ends up gaining the Infinity Gems, you know, and getting all powerful and doing all the stuff that he does in here. It's all a crazy, extreme attempt to prove that he is the equal to Death and that he's worthy of her love. But you get the again, the resurrection of Drax. Again, another character that Starlin had used in his previous Infinity stories prior to this stuff. So he's bringing a lot of his old familiar characters back. You know, Starlin definitely has a particular group of characters that he really, really has a strong attachment to, and he likes to use them in his stories. Thanos is probably the main one, but just as much so is Adam Warlock and likes of Gamora, Pip the Troll, Drax. So they all feature pretty prominently in here. Yeah, so what we start to see happening then, Thanos is obviously back. He has increased strength and power already, even before he gets the Infinity Gems, because Death has kind of blessed him with enhanced abilities. But even so, it's not enough for him. So he craves something more, and he sets his sights on collecting the 6 Infinity Gems. I almost say Infinity Stones every single time, thanks to those films. But this is a 2-part story then, Thanos Quest, and this is the story of how he gets those 6 gems, one by one. He basically tracks them down, finds who has them at the moment, and uses various different strategies to defeat them all to collect the gems one by one until he has them all. This is a really, really cool story to see just how much of a threat and how powerful Thanos actually is, not just physically, but also, you know, intellectually, because he doesn't necessarily beat everybody in a fight. Sometimes it's just outwitting them, outthinking them. Again, Ron Lim artwork in here, though, really cool. Really, really nice style that he brought to this stuff. It's part of why I enjoy it all so much, to be honest. It's just how great I think Lim's artwork is in here. But what with the very nature of the Infinity Gems being so powerful and so reality-breaking in their power, you definitely see a lot of crazy stuff here, you know. It's a great opportunity for Ron Lim to just illustrate some really weird and wacky scenarios. as we see what each of these individual gems can do. You know, it's a really cool story. And what ends up happening here, you know, he gets all the gems, he then goes to death feeling very victorious and presents himself now as her equal. But his plan kind of backfires because she rightly points out that he's not her equal anymore, because he is basically omnipotent and all-powerful with these gems in his possession. He's actually her superior. So, yeah, his plan kind of backfired there. But then from this point on then, so we go back to Silver Surfer after those Thanos Quest issues, and these next few issues are basically Thanos playing around with his new power, you know, just kind of gloating and basking in the glory of being some kind of god that he now basically is. It's really cool. And then you get Mephisto. Yeah, Mephisto kind of turns up as a lackey, just starts following Thanos around, and a bit like, well, what he basically is, he is true to his name. He's basically the kind of Mephistopheles character, you know, just kind of hanging on by the side of the protagonist, claiming to be their friend, claiming to be their loyal servant or whatever. In reality, he's trying to, well, he's planning to stab him in the back at the first opportunity to do so. Here we see Adam Warlock and friends come back, including Gamora. Various other characters, Pip the Troll here, already mentioned they come into the story. This is inside the Soul Gem. So this is where Adam Warlock and co have been for years up until this point. They've actually been in this world, which is inside the Soul Gem. And basically they realise that Thanos is now a threat to all existence, including their little micro-existence in here. So they decide to do something about it, and that is how Adam Warlock comes back into the Marvel Universe and right into the fray. And all this is before we even get to Infinity Gauntlet, you know? It's a huge chunk of issues when you flick through it like this. You know, as I say, it's about 430 pages of the Omnibus until you get to the main story. And I'm trying to keep this pretty brief, but it's hard not to talk about quite a few of the details. I just think it's really well built up. You know, I can't really praise the build up to this event enough. I mean, I've already said I kind of like it more than the event itself. That's how good I think it is. Just really, really focused writing by Jim Starlin. I think that's why it works so well. He clearly had the plan from that very first issue with 34. He knew he was going to set something up, and he did it. You know, you can just tell there was a long-term plan. At the very end of issue 50 of Silver Surfer, this leads directly into the opening of Infinity Gauntlet, where Surfer comes crashing down to Earth, crashing through the window of Doctor Strange's Sanctum Sanctorum, and just starts warning them about the coming of Thanos. And then we finally get into Infinity Gauntlet issue 1. And the first 3.5 issues, I think, of this series are illustrated by George Perez. So we're seeing some excellent artwork from him now in this oversized format. And this is really where it all starts happening. So even if you've never read Infinity Gauntlet, you probably know that arguably the key thing that happens in here now, and the key thing that was taken from this story and adapted into the Avengers Infinity War and Endgame movies, is the snap of his fingers, where he wipes out half of all life in the galaxy, in the universe, whatever. Pretty much straight away, people just start vanishing, and here is that moment. So really well illustrated by Perez, where he just kind of slowly walks down to this platform, raises his hand in the air, snaps his fingers, and that is that. You know, we then switch the perspective of other characters. Spidey here literally witnesses half the population in the street disappear before his eyes. And that phenomena is, of course, happening everywhere. It causes understandable panic and desperation to try and figure out what's going on the part of the heroes. So the rest of the event is basically the remaining heroes who didn't get snapped out of existence, and a lot of them did. You know, you see a cool page here really showing the impact of what's happened, where a lot of the known missing characters are all displayed on a monitor that Cap's looking at. And the remaining heroes band together to try and take down Thanos. You even get a lot of the more powerful beings in the universe, like the likes of Galactus and the other cosmic entities. Their attention is also naturally turned towards what's going on, as they now perceive a real threat to reality, the fabric of things as they are, because of the power that Thanos wields. Really cool cover here. Another great one by Perez. Really like that too. And I like the setting. So Thanos creates this kind of big monument floating in the middle of space, monument to death, like a big, huge throne for her. And it becomes effectively the battle zone in here as well for a lot of the events when people start confronting him there. Here's a great page that shows some of those cosmic entities. Even if you don't know what all these characters are or their original origins, I wouldn't say that affects it too much. But it is safe to say that this is a drastically different story, a more complicated story overall, than the movies that adapted it. Just because there's a much, much larger cast of characters in here, which is always going to be one of the key benefits of comics, you know? There's no limit as to what you can do in a comic book story, whereas obviously there are practical limits within the scope of making a film. But anyway, this is just fantastic stuff. You know, I really like this. Another example of extras scattered throughout. And another great George Perez cover here. I've actually got that on a t-shirt. So this is the big fight. There's a massive confrontation with all kinds of Marvel heroes coming to fight Thanos here, trying to put a stop to his, a stop to him just being so powerful, really. Even Doctor Doom is there, although he's there to try and grab the gauntlet for himself, unsurprisingly. He craves the power. But Thanos basically wipes the floor with everybody, you know? He's just far too powerful. None of these characters are a match, and the ease and the way in which he disposes of most of these characters is certainly pretty dramatic. Really, really, really cool scenes here, just full of action. And partway through this issue, Perez did have to leave the series. He was just struggling to keep up with the deadlines, I think, with working on this and other projects. So around here, Ron Lim takes over again, who is by no means doing a bad job. You know, I've already praised his artwork so much in the Silver Surfer issues leading up to here. So it was definitely a logical choice to take over the book if Perez wasn't able to do it anymore. And he does a great job at finishing it off, you know. The artwork doesn't really suffer that much, you know. Overall, it's still fantastic stuff. So, in the end, Thanos ends up pretty much being his own undoing. He gets a bit sloppy. He does something that means that he basically loses control of the gauntlet, and it actually falls into the hands of Nebula, who then briefly wields it, but she too loses it pretty quickly. And what then ends up happening at the end of the story is that Adam Warlock actually gains it. And everybody has to kind of reluctantly accept that Warlock now has it, because, you know, the worry is that it's that idea that absolute power can corrupt, and whoever wields the gauntlet is definitely absolutely powerful. So, you know, there's a little bit of hesitancy on the likes of characters like Silver Surfer, Doctor Strange, who aren't exactly pleased that Warlock now has the gauntlet. Nevertheless, that is how it all ends off. Really cool end scene though. So another one that was adapted. This is where they go and visit Thanos, who is now just kind of chilling on a farm at the end of the story. It actually shows a cool bit of character growth, really, for Thanos, as he realizes that his various attempts at achieving total power have basically got him nothing in the end to show for it. And seemingly, where we leave him off here, he's quite content with living a much more low-key, chilled-out life. Now, obviously, that's not the end of the story as a whole. You know, this continues into some aftermath issues. There was a series called Warlock and the Infinity Watch, which carried on from this point and told the story of what went on with Warlock next, and eventually that went into the Infinity War event, and then, you know, ultimately Infinity Crusade after that. So this is really only the beginning of the wider story that Jim Starlin was telling overall. But it is a self-contained event for the most part, and you can just read this, and I feel like you would definitely get the feeling of a full story for the most part. And it's the strongest one. You know, for me, it's better than Infinity War and Infinity Crusade. So of the three, if you want to check any of them out, definitely just go with this one. And then if you really, really like this, feel free to obviously go on and check those others out. But I will say that Infinity Gauntlet, I think, is by far the strongest. So that's the event. And then we move into what is the third section of the omnibus, and pretty big section. It's just under half of the whole omnibus, really. And that is the large chunk of tie-in issues, crossover issues. And these are of a very mixed bag of quality, I've got to say. You know, these are not integral reading. They aren't essential to understanding the overall plot of Infinity Gauntlet at all. They are supplementary reads. Some of them have very, very minimal kind of importance when it comes to the event as a whole, including this Cloak and Dagger issue. This is basically completely unrelated. This issue of Spider-Man, again, it's pretty cool. It's got some Rick Leonardi artwork in here. But it really adds nothing to the Infinity Gauntlet story. It's just a kind of random encounter between Spider-Man and Thanos that happens maybe in his mind. It's because Spidey seemingly dies and then has a chat with Thanos and Death and then goes back to life. It's an okay story, but does reading it really help you understand the event, or does it enhance the event in any way? No. Now, these issues, these Incredible Hulk issues, I'm obviously going to praise a whole lot because I've made no secret in the past of how much I love Peter David's run on Incredible Hulk. In fact, I only just reviewed Volume 4 of that run of omnibuses, and I've talked about all 4 of those, and in each one I've talked about how amazing and incredible this run is. So, always cool to see some of David's Hulk issues collected. I will say that these are probably the best issues in here of the crossovers, but that's not because they, again, not because they enhance the event in any way. It's just because David tells a cool Hulk story. You know, he just uses the event to tell a decent Hulk story that's, again, mostly separate. But I'm just going to flick through these pretty quickly now. There are about 8 or 9 Silver Surfer issues which cross over. Now those are the ones that are the most relevant to the event, but even so, again, they don't add that much. They're not necessary reading. I know that some people would prefer an event omnibus like this to have tie-ins in between the issues of the main event, you know, to put them where they would take place chronologically. But in my opinion, that would, in this case anyway, with this event, it would disrupt the flow of the story way too much, because some of this stuff, it's just not great and it's not really important. That's just the truth of it. So I think they're perfectly fine being just kind of tucked away in the back of the omnibus like this, for you to have a read through after you've read the main event, and then you can read through these and kind of place them in the event. So you kind of, I don't know, my opinion is that if you read the main event, then you know the story, and then when you read the crossovers, you can kind of go, all right, okay, yeah, so that takes place between these things. I understand, I see where that would have been. That's just the better way to enjoy it, in my opinion. But I know you may well agree, and let me know if you do. I'm always happy to hear the thoughts of others, and let me know how you feel about Infinity Gauntlet as well. You know, this omnibus, the event as a whole, the, you know, maybe the future events that took place after it, War, Crusade. Do you agree that Gauntlet is the best of the 3? As cool as it is to see these issues of Silver Surfer and more Ron Lim artwork again, yeah, they're just not as strong as the issues that lead up to the Infinity Gauntlet in the first place. But towards the very end, what you do get, and which I do think are worth reading, are not really crossovers, but a couple of Aftermath issues, although they aren't labelled as Aftermath issues in here. They're just, you know, they're just tucked in with the crossovers. Another Hulk issue there, really cool. Dale Keown at this point drawing that series. Absolutely love Keown's artwork on Hulk, so awesome. Yeah, man, this book is huge, honestly. But I just want to skip to the Aftermath. I think it's an issue of Doctor Strange. I want to say issue 36, something like that, of Doctor Strange. And it's labelled as an Infinity Gauntlet epilogue. Sleepwalker, man, what an obscure character he is, you know? So what is the deal with Sleepwalker? Doesn't he just come and start walking around? He's attached to somebody, and when that person sleeps, he comes out. I think, I don't know. Not a character I really know or am all that interested in for the most part. Yeah, more Dale Keown artwork though. Can't argue with seeing more of that. Where is this Doctor Strange issue? It's absolutely hiding from me. There it is. So Doctor Strange, yeah, issue 36, and this is labelled in the corner an Infinity Gauntlet epilogue. So this takes place after all that stuff and after the main event. This is actually worth reading just because it takes place after the story. So this is actually giving you the next bit of stuff. And this is where basically Doctor Strange goes and has a confrontation with Adam Warlock over the concern that as much as he wants to be some kind of benevolent god, if he's got the power of these Infinity Gems at his disposal, the temptation will always be there to abuse that power. Yeah, it's a cool issue to end things on overall. But yeah, again, not a super essential read, but a bit more valid than a lot of the crossover issues. So then we've got some extras in the back, a lot of posters, covers, some interviews. That's really cool, I like that. Yeah, just a bunch of different stuff, like a lot of this kind of house ads, a lot of the usual kind of things you see, really. There's an early version of a George Perez cover to Infinity Gauntlet 2. Some trading cards. Always cool to see those. Yeah, let me know how you feel about this book, though, and this event as a whole. Happy to hear thoughts. Really interested to hear what other people might think about it. But that is that, and I hope it was interesting or useful in some way. As I say, it's a story that I really have a soft spot for. Is it a perfect story? No. Does it have some weaknesses? Yeah. But it's just something that, I don't know, I really happen to enjoy it. It's something that I can read just kind of again and again periodically. You know, I've read it a few times over the years and it never stops entertaining me. So that's why I have it collected here in the omnibus format. I just think it's a great way to collect it all. But thanks as always for watching. I do appreciate it, and let me know your thoughts on the book, and I'll be back again soon with something else.